But until that happens, we'll be continuing to kind of go through some of this review stuff. What I really want as we get into more of the kind of structural review is to really keep in mind, and this is something Sig and I talked about over the weekend, is giving you guys ideas on how to set up plays for your playbook. So on days like today, you guys are executing in the right area and not losing mental capital and top, understanding ranges, understanding why ranges break, understanding when to look for the break of the range, utilizing past structure, specifically value structure to do that. So that's going to kind of be the main goal of today. Just redefining our nodes and then understanding intraday, like on a very small time frame, these little areas and pockets of value, and playing to and from them. Okay, so for our overall market review, I got rid of the massive like 6-month profile just to really hone in on our fresher liquidity in this area. And structurally, it's pretty straightforward. Before we get too much into pathing, our pivot is still holding, right? So we have 4540 being our primary pivot still, with a very balanced node above. Last Friday, we did get a range breakout and put in a strong selling node. This area still holds as seller value above 4590, which is the primary upside pivot here to get back in and through. So this area, if we can get back in, we want to look into our yearly highs. And above this level, we have to rely on our new structure that's being built intraday, as well as order flow areas, to really establish anything. Everything else, as we look left, is quite old. So really, like I said, we have an established buy node that we have not tested in about 2 weeks. Down below, 4500 being your main breakdown pivot. We have in between a very shallow low volume node at 4540 being the center. You'll see me talk about 37 and Sig talk about 44. It is literally just the edges. So I call it the 40 pivot because that is in the middle. And then a very balanced node between our 50 and really 75 to 80. You can push it up into 85, but I would really just be leaning on 75, 50, 90, as well as down through the pivot, then into our 25 edge and 4500. These are like the 5 kind of major levels to trade to and between. Any questions on overall like structure, this balance area, buyer demand, seller demand? Structure has not changed over the last couple of weeks, so we should be pretty familiar with these areas. We can get into the pathing a little bit to talk about it. We'll look at bullish. Now, with today's sell, I'm less confident in a bullish kind of overall week. We can definitely get there into Thursday, Friday, depending on what economic data looks like. But really for bulls, we wanted to hold this selling node and turn it into our buyer value. That was the first main look with this 90 pivot. I wrote about it as well today in intraday ideas. But the main goal here for any buyers in this zone is to quickly get back up and through. We do not want to give sellers an opportunity to flip in this balance and push down, which is what's been looking more likely after today. I will definitely give it into tomorrow before I make any directional calls. But if we, cannot really build anything at 75 or more importantly 85 into our 90 pivot right in this area, we should expect oscillations down back into our low targeting our pivot. So far, early bulls not able to have quite a bullish start. Now, as long as we hold balance, as long as we hold this node, it's fine, right? but we don't really have any direction outside of this node until we trade down right through our 40 pivot or back up through 90. It's really hard to call direction within this whole area in terms of a higher time frame, right? Intraday, we definitely can see intraday trends, and there's plenty of points to trade through here. But in terms of higher time frame, until we're over this or under this, it's just balance. Which is why we wanted to hold at least the halfway. This pullback was a bit deeper, but if we continue to bid up and quickly take out 90, like I said, there is potential for a bullish move later into the week, but not super strong so far out of bulls. Now, when we look at our neutral week, basically that same thing, right? We're a look above, but trade back into this area, or a look below our pivot, testing back into our buy side liquidity and back into our pivot, right? Targeting this 65 to 75 area of our node, obviously. Our higher term or time frame like structure, a lot of balance here, a lot of transactions, a lot of volume. This is an outside week. So far, we're still holding an inside week. So if we just, bid here and sell here, it can definitely still be neutral. I would like to not be neutral because we've kind of oscillated this for a while, and I would like to see range expansion. And honestly, all of these pathings get blown out either to the upside or downside. I really do not care at this point. But I think overall, putting in an outside week, whether that's a neutral or bullish or bearish, will be beneficial for the market, just to get some kind of excitement back in. There's a lot of size just moving in really tight ranges in here. Does that make sense? Kind of like anticipating why we would want more looks outside. It's the same idea as intraday when we look for those liquidity grabs, right? Just on a higher time frame. And we can just quick go over here, right? Like this type of action is far more constructive than this type of action. Very similar idea. And even, which we'll talk about, but this structure was very important in the afternoon here. But getting this look above and then a really strong hold. Just imagine these are all daily candles instead of 3-minute candles. Go into kind of our bearish look here as well. Same kind of rejection points as our inside week. For a neutral week, sellers were quite successful making the first move, right? Losing 90, maintaining this upper structure as a selling node, traversing through the node, and we would not want to see it much higher than where we are into these, weekly POCs, previous week POCs. A lot of value here into our 65 to 75 area. In terms of value edges, we want to see sellers really take control and take out this pivot and do the same thing down into buyer value, right? We get a test in, reject pivot, and then below is very poor structure off of, this was a CPI pump. That's pretty much it. Not much has too much changed in terms of pathing over the last couple weeks because we've just been sitting in this balance. Like I said, I'm really eager for us to exit this balance. I think we have more potential for better trades if we end up selling out of here, and trapping a lot of these participants on the buy side with a lot of FOMO buys as well as into the end of the year kind of flows. Upside definitely possible and plausible. It just gets a little bit messier to start calling levels and really target areas, since it would put it in a new yearly high. So I do favor downside. I talked about this last week where it makes sense. We can go look at the weekly chart really quick. Once again, right, let me delete all this jazz. This is the same drawings from last week, right? And you can see everything is holding. This is the area where we would expect to short, right? We would look for these sells, even back through 2021. It makes sense in here in this edge to be looking for shorts. But until we really get through this 45-40 pivot, which I will put a line on so we can see it a little clearer. Close enough. So lose this upper node and get down into here, and really focusing on 4500, which is marked with this low volume node, which we talked about last week as well. I'm not super eager to short. I'm anticipating, but until we get down into here and see sellers really start to hammer, it's quite risky to be in longer term shorts up here. We've seen what happens every time. They just get blown out, right? And if we zoom out, we can see we do not have much structure up until like 46, 4700, high 4690s, low 4700 for our targets, which is why we really have to rely on intraday structure from here to here. All right, that was kind of quick and dirty. Like I said, not much has changed over the last couple of weeks. Do we have any comments, questions, concerns? Anyone have different reads they want to talk about? Any areas other people are looking at? I think it's constructive if people have different reads and kind of visions here. Nobody, nothing. There's only a handful of people in class today. Yep. Up through our 85 here, Ty. Very good. And I agree. It's just tough until we really get under here and really under 4,500. Yep. We have a couple more typers. Yeah, I mean, and you can play into this edge. It's fine. But when I'm looking at buyer demands, I really want to take the lower half and search for the excess. Because like if we trade down here and do bid off of it, it would make sense to do something like this, right? So this is a fine area. And this also on the composite is much more balanced. No, smallest I go is 3 minutes. I mean, I'm watching the DOM, so like that's a per tick chart, but in terms of charts, I don't go any lower personally.